Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatiruttamaśloke Bhaktirbhavati Naistiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 5, Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. So we are currently in the third section of this chapter. Maitreya honors Vidura after his amazing inquiries and very apt glorification of Maitreya Muni. So we come to text 19. नैकचित्रं त्वयि क्षत्र बादरायणि वीर्यजे गृहीतोऽन्यभावेन यत्त्वया हरिरीश्वरः. Translation.
O Vidura, it is not at all wonderful that you have so accepted the Lord without deviation of thought, for you were born from the semen of Vyasadeva. Purport. The value of great parentage and noble birth is evaluated here in connection with the birth of Vidura. The culture of a human being begins when the father invests his semen in the womb of the mother. According to his status of work, a living entity is placed in a particular father's semen. And because Vidura was not an ordinary living entity, he was given the chance to be born from the semen of Vyasa. The birth of a human being is a great science, and therefore, reformation of the act of impregnation, according to the Vedic ritual called Garbhadhana Samskara, is very important for generating good population. The problem is not to check the growth of the population, but to generate good population on the level of Vidura, Vyasa, and Maitreya. There is no need to check the growth of the population if the children are born as human beings with all precautions regarding their birth. So called birth control is not only vicious but also useless. Hare Krishna.
So now here he says, "O Vidura, it is not at all astonishing to have you having such thoughts about the Supreme Lord, because you are the great son of the great Rishi Badarayana, who is none other than Vedavyas. So word here important is Badarayana Viryaye. So Badarayana Viryaye means, Prabhupada says in the purport, the value of the great parentage is highlighted herein. That sometimes the woke culture, it is said that I mean, your parentage simply doesn't matter, but parentage, if taken proper advantage, is does matter, because here Prabhupada says the culture of human beings begin when the father invests his semen in the womb of the mother, and by the right combination of father and mother, there will be always a very good progeny. In fact, there is a the father of Singapore, he has very famous statement. He said that by because when his son became a prime minister, many people questioned him, and then he was explaining this that because he himself is so dedicated to the welfare of Singapore, along with his wife, his son has to be very very dedicated, and he made a very famous statement in this regard. that with a good parentage, good progeny is the rule. Exceptions are just to prove the rule, right? So here we see Badarayana Viryaye, that this personality, Vidura, is a son of Badarayani, Vedavyas, and therefore it is not at all astonishing that he's having such a great affection towards the Supreme Lord, and conclusion that focusing on the Lord without any deviation. So Prabhupada says, therefore, this Garbhadan Samskar is very important for generating good population. Now, the Garbha Samskar, there is an entire awakening nowadays about the Garbha Samskar and importance of delivering the, imparting the samskaras when the child is in the Garbha itself. In fact, sometimes people go as much as like 90% of the samskaras are done on the child when the child is in the womb. And there are amazing stories of Abhimanyu learning, so many things in the womb, Chakravyuha and other things, and so many other stories. Even Shukadev Goswami in the womb, and there are many, many stories of this. So this Garbhodhan Samskar is very important. Otherwise, what will happen is we will simply get Varana Sankara, right? If the conception takes place on the weekend high over the, uh, drinks, then you cannot expect legitimate progeny. It will be a Varna Sankara, and therefore the activity of conception in the Vedic ritual, it is called as Garbhadan Samskara. So Prabhupada says there is no need to check the population per se. We want, in fact, the population decline is the current day's problem, right? Like South Korea will be wiped out in next 50 years with the current birth rate of 0.68, and most of the developed countries, their birth rate is hovering around 1.5 to 1.75, so which is far below the steady population birth rate of 2.1%, 2.1. So birth is not a problem, population is not the problem, Varna Sankara is the problem. And therefore Prabhupada says there is no need to check the growth of the population, but what is required is, and the population growth by so many birth control activities are not only very vicious but are quite useless. And Prabhupada says what is required is progeny, which is a good progeny through proper Garbhadan Sanskar and not the Varana Sankara. So this is beautiful point Prabhupada mentions here. Text 20. Just give me a second. Yeah. Text 20. माण्डव्यशापात् भगवान् प्रजा संयमनो यमः भ्रातु क्षेत्रे भुजिष्यायां जातः सत्यवती सुतात्. Translation.
I know that you are now Vidura due to cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Yamraj, the great controller of living entities after their death. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadev, in the kept wife of his brother. Purport. Mandavya Muni was a great sage, Bhagavatam 1.13.1, and Vidura was formerly the controller Yamaraj, who takes charge of the living entities after death. Birth, maintenance, and death are the conditional states of the living entities for within the material world. As the appointed controller of death, Yamaraj once tried Mandavya Muni for his childhood uh, for his childhood uh, profligacy and ordered him to be pierced with lance. Mandavya, being angry at Yamraj for awarding him undue punishment, cursed him to become a Shudra, member of the less intelligent laborer class. Thus, Yamraj took birth in the womb of the kept wife of Vichitravirya from the semen of Vichitravirya's brother Vyasadev. Vyasadev is the son of Satyavati by the great sage Parashara, and Vichitravirya is the son of the same Satyavati by the great king Shantanu, the father of Bhishmadev. This mysterious history of Vidura was known to Maitreya Muni because he happened to be contemporary friend of Vyasadevas. In spite of Vidura's birth from the womb of a kept wife, because he had otherwise high parentage and great connection, he inherited the highest talent of becoming a great devotee of the Lord. To take birth in such a great family is understood to be an advantage for attaining devotional life. Vidura was given this chance due to his previous greatness.
So here Maitreya Muni says, "My dear Vidura, I am aware of your previous life, and in your previous life you are actually Yamaraj. But by the sharp of the Mandavya Shapat Bhagavan, that because of the by the sharp of the Mandavya Muni, you, the formerly King Yamaraj, were begotten as the son of Saraswati, Satyavati." So in the purport Srila Prabhupada writes, Mandavya Muni is a great sage, and Vidura was formerly Yamaraji. And Yamaraji once tried. So Mandavya Muni, after his death, when he reached the abode of Yamalok, he was very surprised that he said that I am actually a Muni, and how I am coming to the abode of Yamaraj? Why I have done so many sinful activities? And then Yamaraj said, no, no, as a childhood, in the childhood as a child, you once pierced ant, and for this offense, your head will be cut off with a lance. And Mandava Muni became extremely angry at Yamaraj. And he said that what kind of management and what kind of system you have? As a child, I was completely unknown. And the punishment, the thing which happened out of curiosity and out of complete negligence, you are giving such a punishment to me. I curse you. And therefore, Mandava Muni cursed Yamaraj to become the member of the Martya Loka. And in the Shudra family, again here Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra is Guna Karma Vibhagasha, not the Jati Vyavastha Shudra. And thus Mandavya Shapat, this is how Yamarajji, while performing his activities very well, out of one discrepancy, which is also discrepancy or not, he got the birth as Vidura. But still, when he got birth as a Vidura, he actually was born to Saraswati from the great sage Parashara Muni. And he, sorry, from so Vedavyas, who was the son of Parashara and Satyavati, he begot Vidura, and from the kept mistress, because therefore he is known as Dasiputra as well, right, Vidurji. But such a high parentage from either side, either father or mother's side, give a great advantage to Vidura. And Prabhupada says here, to take birth in such a high, great family is understood to be advantage in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Text 21. So here, Maitreya Muni is actually appreciating Vidura and remembering his previous birth. And Prabhupada says, Maitreya Muni knew all this because he is actually contemporary of Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva conveyed this, this Vidura is actually Yamarajji, and who is my son, but is actually no other than Yamaraj. And Mandavya Muni's sharp gave him the birth as Vidura here. So this was known to Maitreya Muni because of his friendship with Vedavyas. Text 21. भवान् भगवता नित्यं सम्मता सानुगस्यः यस्य ज्ञान उपदेशाय मा आदेशत भगवान् व्रजन्. Translation.
Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. Purport: Yamaraja, the great controller of life after death, decides the living entities' destinies in their next lives. He is surely among the most confidential representatives of the Lord. Such confidential posts are offered to the great devotees of the Lord who are as good as his eternal associates in the spiritual sky. And because Vidura happened to be among them, the Lord, while returning to Vaikuntha, left instructions for Vidura with Maitreya Muni. Generally, the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. Sometimes they come, however, by the order of the Lord, not to hold any administrative post, but to associate with the Lord in person or to propagate the message of of God in human society. Such empowered representatives are called Shaktyavesh Avtara, or incarnations invested with transcendental power of attorney. Hare Krishna.
And then here Maitreya Muni is glorifying Vidura. Your good self is one of the eternal associate of the Supreme Lord. And while departing to the spiritual world, Krishna Svadhamu Upagate, Lord left certain instructions with me for your sake. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada write, Yamaraji is the controller of life after death, and it's a very, very important position, right? All the karma, all everything has to be just one can just see the precision. One's karma is coming through one's husband, wife, friends, relatives, parents, kids. Everything is arranged in such a way that there is no malfunctioning in the karma distribution software. And the in charge of whole thing is under the custody of Durga Devi is Yamaraj. So it's an extremely powerful position, and such a position is given only to confidential representatives of the Lord, right? Like, if somebody is a prime minister, the home minister will become the one who is very, very confident to the prime minister. Or sometimes the chief minister may keep the home ministry with himself only. Therefore, such confidential posts are offered to the great devotees of the Lord, who are actually his as good as his eternal associates in the spiritual sky. And therefore, we know that Yamaraj is actually one of the Mahajan. Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Kumara Kapilomanu Prahlado Janako Bhishmo Balir Vayasakir Vayam. And this Yamaraj is only going to speak the shloka in the 6th canto. And Yamaraj says, I am also one of the Mahajan along with these 12 personalities. So sometimes the pure devotees of the Lord, they come to the material world by the order of the Supreme Lord. Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale. And sometimes, they come to associate with the Supreme Lord and to perform the activities, to perform the supporting roles in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But these personalities are extremely empowered, and they are called as Shaktyavesh Avatar, or incarnations invested with the transcendental power of attorney. Okay. They are Jiva Tattva, but they perform such humongous activities that they actually work on the level of the avatar of the Lord. Therefore, Shakti Avesha Avatar, Shakti Avesha Avatar. Srila Prabhupada is also considered as one of the Shakti Avesha Avatar. Why? Because, of course, he is a Jiva, living entity. But the potency, the spread of Krishna consciousness, which is unimagined in the human history, even in the history of Vaishnavism, was made possible by personality of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So here, Maitreya Muni is very aptly glorifying Vidura. Now we come to the next section of this chapter, section 4. This is going to last from text 22 to 38. Maitreya describes creation. Okay, text 22. अथते भगवत लीला योगमाया उरुबृंहिता विश्वस्थिति उद्भवान्तः अर्था वर्णयामि अनुपूर्वशः. Translation.
I shall therefore describe to you the pastimes by which the personality of Godhead extends his transcendental potency for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic world as they occur one after another. Purport: the omnipotent Lord, by his different energies, can perform anything and everything he likes. The creation of the cosmic world is done by his Yogamaya energy.
Yes. So now here, Maitreya says, now let me start the description of the creation, which is creation, maintenance, and dissolution. Anupurvashaha. Anupurvasha means which happens systematically, one after another. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that the creation of the cosmic world is done by Yogamaya energy of the Supreme Lord. Right. Text 23. भगवानेक आसा आसेदम् अग्रे आत्मात्मना विभुः आत्म इच्छा अनुगतौ आत्मा नानामति उपलक्षणः. Translation.
The personality of Godhead, the master of all living entities, existed prior to the creation as one without a second. It is by his will only that creation is made possible, and again everything merges in him. This supreme self is symptomized by different names. Purport. The great sage here begins to explain the purpose of the four original verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although they have no access to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the followers of the Mayavada impersonalist school sometimes screw out an imaginary explanation of the original four verses. But we must accept the actual explanation given herein by Maitreya Muni because he, along with Uddhava, personally heard it directly from the Lord. The first line of the original four verses runs Aham evasam evagre. The word aham is misinterpreted by the Mayavada school into meanings which no one but the interpreter can understand. Here, aham is explained as the supreme personality of Godhead, not the individual living entities. Before the creation, there was only the personality of Godhead. There were no Purusha incarnations and certainly no living entities, nor was there the material energy by which the manifested creation is effected. The Purusha incarnations and all the different energies of the Supreme Lord were merged in Him only. The personality of Godhead is described herein as the master of all the living entities, all other living entities. He is like the sun disk, and the living entities are like the molecules of the sun's rays. This existence of the Lord before the creation is confirmed by the Shrutis. Vasudeva va idam agra asitana brahmana cha shank shankaraha eko vai narayana asin na brahma neshanaha. Because everything that be is an emanation from the personality of Godhead, he always exists alone without a second. He can so exist because he is all perfect and omnipotent. Everything other than him, including his plenary expansions, the Vishnu Tattvas, is his part and parcel. Before the creation, there were no Karanodakshai or Garbhodakshai or Kshirodakshai Vishnus, nor was there Brahma or Shankar. The Vishnu plenary expansion and the living entities beginning from Brahma are separated parts and parcels. Although the spiritual existence was there with the Lord, the material existence was dormant in him. By his will only is the material manifestation done and undone. The diversity of the Vaikuntha Loka is one with the Lord, just as the diversity of soldiers is one with and the same as the king. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.7, the material creation takes place at intervals by the will of the Lord. And in the periods between dissolution and creation, the living entities and the material energy remain dormant in him.
So here now Maitreya Muni begins the description of creation. The personality of Godhead, the master of all living entities, he is a one without a second and existed prior to creation. Right. So personality of Godhead is not the part of the creation from whom creation begins. By his will only, the creation is made possible, and again everything merges into him. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the great sage Maitreya begins his description of the four original verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning with Aham evasam evagre. And many times, just to counter Srimad Bhagavatam, impersonalist Mayavadi school try to screw out some imaginary meaning from this. Aham means the jiva, and originally there was a jiva, and gave up, just become messed up. in entire explanation. Right. So Srila Prabhupada says that this aham evasam evagre, aham here is the supreme personality of Godhead and not a living entity. And this aham is very well explained not only in the Bhagavatam but also in the Shruti mantras. That he is the master of all and before him nobody existed. Right. Vasudeva va idam agra. Asit na Brahma, na ch Shankara. So all the Swamsha and the Vibhinnansha expansions of the Lord, they exist only after the existence of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, everything, everyone other than him is his part and parcel. Either Swamsha in terms of Vishnu Tattva or Vibhinnamsha, the separated parts and parcels. So Srila Prabhupada says here that first the Lord exists, and from the Lord comes the Purusha avatars, and from the Purusha avatars there is an expansion of Lord Shiva. From Lord Shiva there is the further expansion of Sadashiva is getting expanded, and then there is a material creation. So originally, although the spiritual existence was there with the Lord, material existence was dormant within him. It's very simple, just like somebody, person exists, he is yet to be married. So his this existence is there, but his family life is dormant within him. The family life will start after some time when he gets married, has a wife, has children, and they live as a family. So person existed, and the family life was dormant within him. Similarly, the Lord existed, the spiritual existence is there, and the material existence was dormant within him. And it is by the will of the Supreme Lord, this material manifestation is done and undone. And therefore, the Lord, in 9.7, Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya, Prakritim Yanti Mamikam, Kalpakshaye Punastani, Kalpadu Visrujamyam. He explains in Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the millennium of all material manifestations, they enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I again create them. And this is how Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate, that we have seen that the Lord inhales and exhales, and the creation just continues like this. So this is how the material creation takes place at the will of the Lord at specific intervals. Okay. And this is only through one of the Kala of the Supreme Lord, that is Mahavishnu. So here, the creation, we have seen that Vidurji, he wanted to hear beginning from the Purusha. And now here, Maitreya Muni is beginning his explanation from the Purusha incarnation, the creation of the material universes. Text 24. Sava esha tada drishta न अपश्यत् दृश्यमेकराट् मेने असंतम इवात्मानं सुप्त शक्ति असुप्त दृक्. Translation.
The Lord, the undisputed proprietor of everything, was the only seer. The cosmic manifestation was not present at that time, and thus he felt imperfect without his plenary and separated parts and parcels. The material energy was dormant, whereas the internal potency was manifested. Purport: the Lord is the supreme seer because only by his glance did the material energy become active for cosmic manifestation. At that time, the seer was there, but the external energy over which the glance of the Lord is cast was not present. He felt somewhat insufficient, like a husband feeling lonely in the absence of his wife. This is a poetic simile. The Lord wanted to create the cosmic manifestation to give another chance to the conditioned souls who were dormant in forgetfulness. The cosmic manifestation gives the conditioned souls a chance to go back home, back to Godhead. And that is its main purpose. The Lord is so kind that in the absence of such a manifestation, he feels something wanting, and thus the creation takes place. Although the creation of the internal potency was manifested, the other potency appeared to be sleeping, and the Lord wanted to awaken her to activity, just as a husband wants to awaken his wife from the sleeping state for enjoyment. It is the compassion of the Lord for the sleeping energy that he wants to see her awaken for enjoyment like the other wives who are awake. The whole process is to enliven the sleeping conditioned souls to the real life of spiritual consciousness so that they may thus become as perfect as the ever liberated souls in the Vaikuntha lokas. Since the Lord is Satchidananda Vigraha, He likes every part and parcel of His different potencies to take part in the blissful rasa, because participation with the Lord in His eternal rasa lila is the highest living condition, perfect in spiritual bliss and eternal knowledge.
So now next is the Lord, undisputed proprietor of everything. Okay, this is Ekarat. Therefore, it's called as undisputed enjoyer, proprietor of everything. Swarat, the Lord is also called as Ekarat. Was the only seer. The cosmic manifestation was not present at that time. That is the what is that time? The time t is equal to 0. The real t is equal to 0. Okay, the beginning of the material creation, and thus felt imperfect without his plenary and the separated parts and parcels. Material energy was dormant, whereas internal energy was manifested. Srila Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the Lord is the supreme seer, and by his glance, entire material energy becomes activated. Sa aikshataha. The material nature is dormant, but when there is a glance of the Supreme Lord, the material energy starts sizzling and comes to life. Sa aikshataha. So initially, when the Lord was there, he and the internal energy is always activated, but because the external energy was sleeping, the Lord felt some was insufficient. Just like Srila Prabhupada says, just like the husband feels lonely in the absence of the wife. Okay, the Lord wanted to create the cosmic manifestation, and why this creation? The creation is another resemblance of the another exhibition of compassion of the Lord, because he wanted to give a chance to the living entity to go back home, back to Godhead. So the creation of the internal potency was manifested, but the external potency was still sleeping, and therefore Lord decided to wake up the external potency. Srila Prabhupada gives just as husband having two wives, he's enjoying with one wife, and another wife is just sleeping in ignorance. He will wake up the another wife also and say that just we have come to this nice place, we are enjoying life. You also get up and enjoy. And the real purpose was to give the sleeping conditioned souls real life of spiritual consciousness. So the Supreme Lord is Rasa Vigraha, he is Satchidananda Vigraha, and he likes to take part in with all his living entities and all the parts and parcel in the blissful Rasa exchange. And when he saw one of the potency sleeping, he woke up that potency for further creation. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhupada.
you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.